Where is EA Sports at with the next generation of its college football video game?
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of a misconception about why this project was delayed. Because I think that some well-meaning folks on the outside looked at this and thought, oh, they must be pushing it back because of licensing. They haven't figured out NIL. They haven't figured out how to pay everybody yet. Or they haven't gotten every school on board. And that's why they want to put it back a year. And people at EA and people with the CLC and folks within the licensing world told me that wasn't really the case. And while it's true, the licensing model to pay all the athletes is not finalized yet. A major reason why that's gone slower is because of some legal issues that have nothing to do with Electronic Arts and have everything to do with some of these big licensing companies. But they're like, we'll get there. Like that's we're not super worried about that. It's going to take a while. The biggest reason it was delayed is because the game wasn't ready. Like the nuts and bolts technical infrastructure of the game wasn't ready. There's this idea that you can just report 2014, right? And just drag that into a PS5. Like what I've heard roundly is no, because almost none of those developers are still at the company. That was 2 video game systems ago. None of the architecture works anymore. And also, that's not an NCAA game anymore. We're calling this EA Sports College Football. We want this to be completely new IP, which means we don't want it to be the same thing that it was. We're not saying that we're going to get rid of Dynasty mode or get rid of the things that you loved about it, but this is our one chance to rebuild everything and make it really good. Because, I think consumers probably realize this, but for the video games that are annual for sports games, like they're not building a completely new NBA 2K every single year. They're changing the rosters. They're adding like 1 or 2 new features. They're getting a new celebrity cameo for the career mode. They're going to charge another $100 for it. And like the college football game that comes out after this college football game will not be a completely new product. They're going to make some tweaks. So you want to make sure that the framework, the architecture of the game is best as it can be. And, by pretty late in the football season is when they, as I understand it, they reached that conclusion that this is going to have to get moved back. And hopefully it's ready in the summer before the 24 season.
So that is a target, the summer before the 24 season.
Yeah, that's the target for that July. And the other thing is they're hoping more people have PlayStation 5s by then. Because this is not going to be something that's going to be released on the PS4 or the last version of Xbox. I don't think it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch. And, as a lot of us realized, it was hard to get a PS5 coming out of COVID. There were shortages everywhere. Hopefully by next summer, anybody that wants one of these things will be able to get one.
The most recent reporting you've done on the game has been around the audio assets, which is near and dear to our hearts here at the Solid Verbal, given our attention to detail with respect to all things audio. But what have you learned on that front that you found interesting?
Yeah, I want to actually see if while we're talking, I could pull up the exact spreadsheet so I can kind of cite chapter and verse exactly what's in these kind of things. So over the summer, EA asks every single school that's participating in the game, like, we want as authentic of a stadium experience as we could possibly get. So we're going to take like 2,000 photos of your stadium from every possible angle so we can render it in 3D. Not just the stadium itself, but what you see, in the horizon, the dorm that's over like the west, sideline or something, the whole thing. And we also want to replicate the in-stadium experience. So if you guys play a song as the team is coming out of the tunnel, even if it's like a copyrighted song by another artist, we want to know what that is. If you play a funny sound effect on third down, we want to know what that is. Right. We don't just want your fight song. If your students do a chant, if a lot of schools do a kind of like production between the third and the fourth quarters, we want that entire thing. And it was a big spreadsheet. It had like 28 different events. And they asked everybody, give us the name of the song. You give us a clip of the audio asset if you've got it, and send it to us. We can't promise we're going to pay for every single licensed thing, but we're going to make this as authentic as we can. And people at EA said, like, we are going to spend for some of those licenses. So I do think it's safe to assume, barring something unforeseen, like, to jump around at Camp Randall for Wisconsin.
Oh, that's
going to be there. Like,
we're so cool.
We're going to go. We're going to get in, enter Sandman for Virginia Tech. And it was kind of surprising, which is how granular everyone's been doing about this. Or like, hey, I think Eastern Michigan, when they come out on the field, they have somebody with like a sledgehammer, I think, and like breaks through a concrete wall because like the whole thing is like the factory. Yeah, that was submitted. That's something that EA is going to try to do. We were trying to get the chainsaws for Oregon State, like the whole thing. I can't promise that every single one of those is going to be in the game, but I can tell you, here's what the school sent to Electronic Arts, and that has been the thing that's been reiterated to me again and again. Like, I can't promise it's going to be a perfect game, if you are skeptical about electronic arts, I get it. Like, I played the last Mass Effect game. I know that some of these things are duds, right? Like, we understand, but I can tell you that they are trying. They care very deeply about making this as authentic as possible, and that's part of what makes college football cool. It isn't just the RPO; it's the chainsaw on the sidelines and the crazy things, and seeing your hometown on a PS5.
It is the very small nuance and these very, very specific traditions that make college football special. You know, that is the lifeblood that makes this whole thing go. And with respect to the video game, the fact that they are trying to incorporate that level of detail is, I think, encouraging, right? It's like that. You were describing this to me. I was thinking of the old computer programming exercise that they would teach you in like Comp Sci 101, where they ask you, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And it's not just you get 2 slices of bread, you smear peanut butter and jelly on it, and then you eat it. No, you actually have to define all the different steps that go into making the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Open the jar, stick knife in jar, scoop, like all of these different process-oriented things. That it sounds like that's where they're at with collecting some of these assets. It's not just what is the vibe when a team comes out onto the field. It's, okay, how do we get the sound of the chainsaw that we can actually put in this thing?
Yeah, and then what can we get away with without messing with rights holders or budgets, right? So, like, one of the things that the internet was asking me about is, all right, are they going to put neck in the game? Is the LSU band going to do that? Is there going to be an option to pay a fine to play neck if you're up by a lot? And if you do, what student chants are you going to put in the game? Because part of the authentic college football experience, I think, is sometimes hearing things that don't necessarily get an E rating from the ESRB.
I believe that's accurate.
So there's a little bit of a push and pull with trying to figure out how to make this authentic but still brand safe, right? So, in case you're wondering, LSU did not submit neck, but some other schools did. So we'll see if that makes its way into the game or not.
Fascinating stuff, Matt. How much would you say of your day-to-day is people writing with questions about this?
It is the overwhelmingly number one way that I get new readers from people that don't work or study college athletics. I can track, who's got a .edu email address or like an OhioValleyConference.com email address or something, and who's just a guy. And if they're just a guy, a lot of them are interested in realignment, they're interested in money, but it's the video game that they're most interested in. And if I'm doing like a national hit on something, it's more likely to be this than it is the NLRB, which is funny. I don't know if I told you guys this last time. You know what? I kind of became this beat writer on this thing by accident, right? Like, I wasn't looking for this information specifically. I filed a request to learn about a school who was dropping a licensed beer. And it was through those emails that I got the initial project proposal. And like, well, this is way more interesting than somebody setting up a beer at the University of Nevada. And that's kind of how I fell into it. But yeah, I think since we've been talking, someone's already asked me about it on Twitter. I can assure all of you who are listening, if I know something, if I'm not speculating, if I know something, I promise you I'll write it. I'm not good at keeping secrets. I just don't want to, violate on stuff that I can't cite chapter and verse,
One of our interviews that we did with you, and it might have been May of 2022 or 2021. It was 1 year in the month of May. We talked about this video game. It was one of the biggest videos that we put on YouTube, the clip. I mean, it just popped. People really are craving more information on this. And it's rare. Let's be honest, it's a rare thing with respect to video games that you get to start over. If you're EA or if you're anybody, that you get to start over and build up a sports franchise from scratch. Most of them have been built over the course of many years already. Madden, they're not going to redo Madden. They're not going to redo fully FIFA. Complicated, right? But it's not often that you have this type of opportunity. So I understand the appetite for the information. I count myself among those that are very, very hungry for more info on this.
I can't wait. I mean, it is. I'm often sending out a request or trying to talk to somebody in this industry multiple times a month. And it's been exciting too, right? Because I play a lot of video games, but I didn't know a lot about the development cycle, and there's a lot of parts of this world I didn't know about. The one thing I will add that maybe your listeners might be interested in, if you are like desperate to scratch this itch and you don't want to wait, there are a couple of indie college football games that are out there. Like if you have Steam, there is a game that I've written about called Football Coach College Dynasty, which is kind of like Football Manager, like if you're into soccer, but just for college football. Obviously, you don't have the licenses, but if you want to scratch the scouring through recruiting charts and like managing who's getting a red shirt and building a dynasty that way, you can do it. I think it's like $10, and I paid for it. I wrote a story about it. I think it's pretty fun, and I wouldn't be shocked if when the EA Sports game comes out, if there are other independent titles that are not trying to be like a simulation game, whether we end up with a college football trading card game or some mobile games or some other like offshoots of this, I think there's going to be more than one game that comes out.
Yeah, and that's not even to say that if you still have your old PlayStation and the copy of NCAA 14, I've got it back behind me. I don't know if it's visible in the shot here.
I have it just off camera here too.
But you can do all sorts of modifications. There's something called College Football Revamped, which has definitely taken on a kind of a second life now in the absence of there actually being a title out there. So it's a very interesting world. And if the reaction to some of the videos, some of our conversations with you are any indication, there's a strong appetite for this next version of the game. So I'm excited.